What a day at the 49ers facility. And what a day in the Bay Area. This was the morning, and then I headed on down this sunny day, and it maybe, a little foreshadowing here on the cable car, the crank or the brake or whatever that is on the back of the cable car. 49ers decorated. And then Fred Warner hit the practice field again. And then Ricky Pearsall hit the practice field again. Aptly themed day. Of course, a burger at the Dutch Goose. I wanted to make today very, very 49ers themed. This is an elite burger down in Menlo Park, the double cheeseburger at the Dutch Goose. And then you've got some signed Bill Walsh memorabilia at the top as well. Quality spot as we pivot here to the studio to talk some 49ers. So Clay Kubiak talked today, and Kubiak is at the center of this matchup because his brother Clint Kubiak, who used to be with the 49ers as the Seahawks offensive coordinator, those two have not texted all week. They have just been buried in game planning, getting ready for this game on the short week for the 49ers. But I thought that Clay Kubiak very concisely illustrated the challenge in front of the 49ers offense. He can give a simple yet staggering statistic. The Seattle Seahawks did not play a single snap in base defense against the 49ers on January 3rd. They held them to under 200 total offensive yards. They held them to only 3 points. That is the beauty of this Seattle defense. They can play the run out of a pass defense formation. The 49ers have to, at the very least, even if they can't get the Seahawks out of nickel or out of dime, and that is a lighter personnel package because you take a heavier run-stopping linebacker off the field. At the very least, the 49ers have to get one of the two safeties up toward the line of scrimmage. If both Seattle safeties in a nickel or a dime defense are able to play away from the line of scrimmage back, that's what's called a two-shell defense, if they're still able to do that and stop the run, the 49ers are in big trouble because they're not going to give up any big downfield passes. The 49ers would have to get very lucky for that to be the case. Brock Purdy did not have a single completion against Seattle of over 20 air yards. He attempted 5 such passes back in week 1 when the 49ers beat the Seahawks 17-13. He was 4 of 5 for over 100 yards on throws that traveled over 20 air yards, but nothing in the week 18 game, which goes to show you a couple things. A, the 49ers were not able to run the ball in a way that made Seattle respect the run. So Seattle did not have to come up with its safeties, with its defensive personnel. And B, the 49ers just didn't have the ability to stretch the field anyway without Ricky Pearsall. But there is some good news for San Francisco. Ricky Pearsall was back out at practice today. I know that we've been talking so much about the Trent Williams return. That was last week. That was big. I know that we've been talking so much about the Fred Warner return to practice, but it is also worth paying some attention to the Ricky Pearsall return to practice. And there he is out on the field. Pearsall was available in week 1 against the Seahawks. He was not available in week 18. If you watch my helmet update video, then I have the full interview with Ricky Pearsall, who told me he's optimistic about being able to play this weekend on Saturday against the Seahawks. But more than anything, I think that the strategy of this game, the overarching battle between Kyle Shanahan, Clay Kubiak, and Mike McDonald on the other side relies on that run game. And of course, the pass game can set up the run game, and I actually would advise for that. But the fundamental part of that battle resides within where the safeties sit for the Seattle Seahawks. Can the 49ers drag one down so that they can open opportunities in the pass game? Or are they going to be stuck in the same 20-yard box that they were stuck in week 18? Let's have a listen to Clay Kubiak, the 49ers offensive coordinator. He does a really good job explaining the dynamics at hand.
On the ball versus that. That's why you got to try to get him out. Yeah, I mean, that's why you got to run the ball versus that. That's why you got to try to get him out of that. You know, when teams can defend the run in two shell, that's what they want, so that they can keep those safeties deep. and be in the pass coverages they want to play. The thing that with these guys, they do a good job of playing their two shell, but then all their coverages complement that. They can kind of fit the run from their single high from those two shell looks. So it's a huge challenge, but the challenge is on us. We got to run the ball better. We got to be better on third down so we can get more ops to run the ball. That's really the biggest thing is we got to stay on the field so we can keep calling runs. Then hopefully, you can get the defense to commit another guy in the box, which helps other things. So that's the plan. That's just football. We got to execute and stay on the field, and hopefully those runs will come.
In Week 18, the 49ers went 2 of 9, which is 22%. Or is it even 22%? No, it's less than 22%. 2 of 9? It's less than 20%. No, it's slightly more. It's 22%. I'm doing the math in my head. They were in the 20s on third down conversion percentage. 2 of 9, not going to keep you on the field. In Week 1, the 49ers converted 50% of their third downs. So, I mean, you heard Clay Kubiak talk about it. It's all obviously tied together. But staying on the field allows you to run the ball more often. Running the ball more often will make the Seahawks respect it more. Respecting the run means bringing a safety down. That opens up the pass. Now, the fact that the 49ers were not able to run at all in Week 18 against the Seahawks, with Seattle staying in nickel and dime the whole game and also playing that two-shell defense, tells me that the 49ers are probably going to have to throw it a little bit in order to establish some running room. They weren't really able to run the ball against Philadelphia either. They ran on the first play, outside zone to the left, and then that was a 2-yard loss. The second play was the 61-yard gain to Demarcus Robinson. The touchdown on that drive to Robinson was actually a double run fake to the left, and then the fake pitch to the right. Robinson beat Quinyon Mitchell. So it was a game that started with passing productivity for the 49ers, had to rely on passing productivity nearly throughout all 60 minutes until we saw some Philadelphia defensive fatigue toward the end. And Christian McCaffrey had one of his longer runs, about 10 yards or so. Remember, picked up a first down near the goal line, and the 49ers were moving closer and closer until Brock Purdy dropped back, stepped up in the pocket, and found McCaffrey for the eventual winning touchdown. The 49ers got nowhere near tiring Seattle out back in Week 18. They only ran 42 offensive plays. So you're not going to be able to take the steam out of an opposing defense if that is your level of productivity and level of staying on the field. You have to get that count above at least 60 plays. I mean, you'd love to get it to 70, but you'd at least want to hit 60 in this game. The inverse benefit to that is that the Seahawks offense is on the sideline every single time that the 49ers offense is out on the field. So it is about who hogs the ball better. And the 49ers are typically very good at this. They weren't good at this against the Seahawks in Week 18, and Seattle was able to essentially execute the San Francisco blueprint against them. Right now, up on the San Francisco Standard, we have our very, very big piece from today. There he is, Mr. Warner himself. His return to practice motivates an exhausted 49ers team. They've been exhausted for a while, and the 49ers have hit a little bit of a paradox this week in that they need the rest. That's very obvious. Only 5 days in between games. It was an East Coast trip out to Philadelphia. But the 49ers also feel that they need practice because the last time they played Seattle, they only walked through during the course of the week, and they didn't look that great out on the football field. So the prevailing thought process for the 49ers this week has been, we got to do something a little bit different than the first time we played the Seattle Seahawks. But the way that the schedule sets up with the Philly game being on Sunday and with this trip to Seattle being on Saturday, there isn't a whole lot of time. So Kyle Shanahan and his staff got together and they decided that the best plan of attack would be to rest as much as possible on day one of the week. That was Tuesday, the practice day. Don't hold the practice, only hold a walkthrough. Instead of requiring players to be there for 7 hours, only require them to be there for 3.5 hours. Prioritize and emphasize sleep, which is the biggest benefit to recovery. And then have guys come in for a legitimate practice the next day, which was today on Wednesday. It just so happened that Fred Warner's practice window was open this week. So today was Fred Warner's first full-speed practice with the 49ers. I wrote about all of the dynamics up on the San Francisco Standard. The best way that you can support the channel is obviously by hitting the subscribe button. We are closing in on 99,000 real subscribers. And another really great way that you can enrich your own 49ers fandom is to read the San Francisco Standard. Go ahead and sign up for that. We've got the best 49ers coverage there is up on the Standard. I am copying that link. I am sending it to Mike. Mike is going to go ahead and put that into the description for us. And it is a good time for you to start reading up. I mean, there's a lot. Fred talked about his recovery, and it was really interesting to me. Probably the top piece of new material that I learned from that was that at the 6-week mark, he was able to start manipulating the target date through how hard he worked and how diligently he worked. He said that the first 6 weeks, you can't put weight on the ankle anyway. That's when the bone is healing. So for the first 6 weeks, it's whatever. Obviously, you want to eat and you want to sleep and you want to make sure that you're aiding the recovery in that way, but you can't really change your workout regimen to speed the process along. But from the 6-week mark onward, it got real. And Fred Warner was able to start putting himself into position where timelines could be denied. And the initial timeline that we heard casually from Kyle Shanahan right after the injury was about 4 months. Well, we're at about the 3-month mark. We're 94 days away from when Fred Warner dislocated and fractured his ankle against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If he can get back out onto the field, and obviously it is not a sealed done deal yet, but he looked really good at practice today. If Fred can do that and get back on the field, he will join some really, really elite company when it comes to coming back from injuries on a much quicker timetable than initially anticipated. There was Jerry Rice in the 1997 season. He also got hurt at Tampa Bay. This happened in week 1, August 31st. By December 15th, Jerry Rice was back out on the field. This picture is taken. It's like a screen grab, it looks like, from Monday Night Football on the night of December 15th, 1997. It was about 3.5 months after Jerry Rice tore his ACL and his MCL. He was back out on the field for the 49ers. He even caught a touchdown pass from Steve Young. You can see here. Some really interesting trivia about this game is that it was against the Denver Broncos, who went on to win the Super Bowl that year. The Denver Broncos head coach was Mike Shanahan. I'm guessing that Kyle Shanahan was at this game. I should have asked Kyle Shanahan. Maybe I have a chance to ask him about it tomorrow. That's a good question to ask. What was Mike Shanahan at the game that Jerry Rice came back in 1997? Also in attendance at this game was Ed McCaffrey, who was a receiver for the Denver Broncos. But there's Jerry Rice, who came back in 3.5 months. They always talk about ACLs as being a 9-month kind of thing. Well, it was Jerry Rice. He was able to do it in 3.5. Now, the issue here, and this is obviously something to always be wary of, re-injury. Jerry might have come back a little too quickly because he did crack his kneecap upon his return. And that shelved Jerry Rice for the rest of the season. And unfortunately, the 49ers did not have a chance to win the Super Bowl, even though they had a really, really good team and the NFC's number 1 seed. The Broncos ended up winning the Super Bowl. The 49ers lost to the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game. They just didn't have enough receiving firepower. And they actually beat the eventual champion Broncos 34-17 on this night. So that's example 1 of somebody coming back very, very early. Here is Fred Warner, who has a chance to defy the return timetable. Example 2 comes from the 2004 season, also a 49ers Hall of Famer, but by this point, he was already with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's Terrell Owens. Broke his leg late in the regular season, late December, but by the Super Bowl, I'm guessing it was in February, it was 7 weeks later, Terrell Owens was back, played with a rod in his leg, caught 9 passes for 111 yards, and probably would have been the Super Bowl MVP had the Eagles won, but Tom Brady and the Patriots got the win instead. So, can Fred Warner join that kind of company? I mean, what he's done so far has already been impressive. And I think that Trent Williams said it best in the 49ers locker room today. He said that even if Fred doesn't play in a game of this postseason, even if they made it to the Super Bowl and he didn't play, he has already inspired the team so much by putting the 5-4 back on his chest, by getting on the practice field. Hell, just by working as hard as he has to get to this point. I mean, it's impossible to ignore the juxtaposition. But Brandon Ayuk left the building about 2 months ago and hasn't been seen since, except for when he's speeding by and posting about it on YouTube. And nobody knows what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, Fred Warner, who got hurt on October 12th, is doing his darndest to get back out there and play one of the most violent sports that there is, over a month ahead of when he was initially prognosticated to return. So those are a couple guys who were A-list pillars entering the 2024 season. The 49ers signed Brandon Ayuk to $30 million a year. I mean, you don't pay a guy that kind of money without thinking that he's a foundational pillar of your football team. Fred Warner, obviously a foundational pillar. A tale of two foundational pillars. One of them goes MIA, and the 49ers have really struggled because of it in certain aspects of their game this year. Not saying that they haven't overcome it. They've overcome a lot, but it's made things a lot more complicated with the math of separation at wide receiver. And the other guy, this one right here, has worked his ass off to defy an injury timeline, and at the very least has given his team a massive, massive emotional and spiritual boost heading into this game against Seattle. So we shall see what the next step is. Well, I'll be back in the 49ers facility tomorrow. And at that point, Kyle Shanahan will release the 49ers final injury report. My guess would be that Fred Warner is officially listed as questionable for this game, and that would allow the 49ers to push the decision back even further. The really wild part of all this is that the 49ers, even if Fred Warner doesn't play on Saturday night, will look significantly different defensively than they did against the Seahawks, and that was less than 2 weeks ago. That was on January 3rd. They're going to have Marquise Siegel starting at a safety position. I talked to Marquise in the locker room today, and I asked him if there was one moment this year that was the biggest growing moment for him, because obviously he has taken this opportunity and embraced it. He got benched early in the year, but then when we saw him again back in on a defensive alignment against the Philadelphia Eagles, he looked like a different player. He wasn't making the mistakes. He wasn't the liability in coverage that he was back early in the season. And he said that week 5 game against the Rams, where the Rams really picked on him. Matthew Stafford really picked on him downfield. That was a big, big learning lesson. Remember, there was the big throw from Stafford downfield to Tutu Atwell late in that game. It was probably a 40-plus yard gain, and that was Marquise Siegel in on the coverage. But Marquise has continued fighting, and I think it's really, really tough, especially as a rookie in this league, where it could be really discouraging. I mean, this is a fast-moving, violent, cutthroat sport. When you get benched, maintaining the type of intensity during the week to continue preparing has got to be very difficult. You've got to be really discouraged when you get benched. And so it's really easy to work hard, I think, or it's never easy to work hard, but it's a lot easier to work hard when the bright lights are on and when people are cheering you on and you've got the adulation of 70,000 fans in a stadium, and then you can check your social media and everybody cares about what you're doing. But when you get benched, a lot of people forget about you. And I don't think it's quite as easy for some guys, especially if they've already tasted the height of things. I don't think it's quite as easy for them to maintain the same level of focus and intensity in their training. But Marquise Siegel, I think, is showing us that he's built differently. And the proof was in the pudding of how he was able to play in that game for the 49ers against the Eagles. Now, it's not just going to be Siegel that's different. They didn't start Eric Kendricks in week 18. They might have been at the Sam, actually, to start that game, but he wasn't starting at Mike, is what I'm saying. He wasn't starting at the Mike linebacker position. Garrett Wallow wasn't starting at the weak side linebacker position. And that's 3 new defenders, Kendricks, Wallow, and Marquise Siegel, without even counting Fred Warner. Now, Wallow's another crazy story. And so much of this 49ers run at this point, like there starts to be a supernatural connection. You're like, oh, is this a team of destiny? Where's this coming from? I talk about the 2010 San Francisco Giants torture, and then these 49ers torture. Both of those teams win a playoff game, a must-win playoff game in Philadelphia. How about this? Garrett Wallow joined the team when the 49ers claimed him off of waivers in early December. Garrett Wallow was teammates with Dre Greenlaw in Denver. Wallow actually became good friends with Greenlaw in Denver. So you got familiar with Greenlaw's game and his history with the 49ers. Fast forward to now, just about a month later, Garrett Wallow is starting at Dre Greenlaw's exact old position with the 49ers, weak side linebacker. And there's a chance, like a very non-zero chance at this point, that especially if the 49ers win, that it's going to be Wallow playing next to Fred Warner at some point, which would be just like Dre Greenlaw next to Fred Warner. I mean, it's crazy. Now, this could get us into all the potential permutations of the linebacker position if and when Fred Warner does return. And this is all speculation right now. I'm not going to pretend like I know how the 49ers would handle this. They would be foolish to leak this out. But when Fred Warner does return, does he plug immediately into Mike linebacker? That's the one with the radio and the helmet. I only ask that because their 4th Mike linebacker of the season, Eric Kendricks, is a former All-Pro who just played an All-Pro caliber game against Philadelphia. Would you really want to mess with that? Or do you plug Fred Warner into the will linebacker to really get his feet wet? Or maybe he plays Sam at the very start just so it's not as many snaps. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm tossing ideas up off the camera right now. It's a good problem for the 49ers to have, though, because up until very recently, you figured if Fred Warner returns, you just plug him into Mike, no questions asked. But Eric Kendricks is a quality Mike linebacker, and you may not want to mess with that dynamic. You may want to find a different spot for Fred, at least early on. I, again, don't know. The 49ers have the right to keep this murky, and they will keep this murky. They don't want to put undue pressure on the Fred Warner return, and they don't want to tip their strategy to the Seattle Seahawks and potentially other opponents beyond that. So all fair enough, but the 49ers all of a sudden have some talent in that linebacker room that they didn't have not all that long ago. And, I tell you about the Dre Greenlaw, Garrett Wallow story. How about the KJ Wright story? He's the guy that's been working with all these newcomers. He's the 49ers assistant linebackers coach. He's a former great for the Seattle Seahawks. He was a really good linebacker, playing there next to Bobby Wagner in Seattle on the Legion of Boom defenses. So it's KJ Wright who brought Kendricks and Wallow up to speed. Now KJ Wright gets to go back up to Seattle. He's 36 now. He's a coach, so he's a retired player, and gets to see if the fruits of his labor with the 49ers end up giving San Francisco a massive playoff win. But KJ played in that January 2014 game when the Seahawks and Richard Sherman beat the 49ers. I believe I accidentally said Malcolm Butler the other day. I meant Malcolm Smith was the one with that interception. Malcolm Butler had the interception against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl the following season. That was after the 2014 season in the 2015 Super Bowl. But it was Malcolm Smith, the linebacker who eventually became a 49er later in his career, who intercepted the Richard Sherman tip. It was Colin Kaepernick throwing to Michael Crabtree. 49ers made 3 signings. So we're going to go ahead and bust open the 49ers roster and depth chart that I keep. And we're going to go through some of the roster moves that San Francisco made. All of them are relatively minor, but because George Kittle underwent his surgery today and they placed George Kittle on injured reserve this week, the 49ers had practice squad spots open because they did move Braden Willis up from the practice squad to George Kittle's old spot on the 53-man roster. All right, so as promised, here we go. I got to scoot up a little bit closer to the screen because I'm actually going to be doing some typing here. The 49ers signed the 3 guys whom they worked out on Tuesday. They signed Derek Forrest, a safety. So we're going to scroll down over here and we'll go to the safety position. They've had Derek Canteen playing both safety and cornerback for them. Derek Forrest now is going to join Derek Canteen. So they have 2 Dereks. One who spells his name Derrick, and one who spells his name Darrick. 2 Dereks at that safety position. Anybody who's added as a free agent, or actually anybody who's a rookie is in green. Anybody who's added as a free agent is highlighted in teal. Derek Forrest, if you want to know a little bit about him, he was drafted by the Commanders, 5th round, 2021. He's been in the league for 5 years, and he's appeared in 40 games. So he's played quite a bit. 126 tackles, 9 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. So a decent player who's also been in the Colts building, the Steelers building, and he was released by Pittsburgh on November 12th. So Forrest is somebody with some history in the NFL who would be able to be flexed up and play down the road if the 49ers started suffering more injuries. Because Jair Brown over here is currently hurt, the 49ers needed another body at safety. They might even immediately elevate Derek Forrest for special teams duties this week if the Jair Brown injury hurts their special teams numbers. Because if Siegel goes up to start, you might not want Siegel taking as big of a special teams load for this team. So perhaps Derek Forrest is in uniform for San Francisco immediately, right out of bed on Saturday night. The 49ers also signed Hayden Rucci to their practice squad. They released Javon Baker, the receiver from the practice squad, to make room here. So we can take Baker's name. That's a wide receiver they added in early December, formerly of the Patriots. Can remove Baker, and now we can add Hayden Rucci to the tight end room. Now, this was very, very expected. Hayden basically takes Braden Willis's old spot. Braden Willis is now on the 53-man roster. So Rucci is the team's 4th tight end. Willis moves up to number 3. Jake Tonjes is the starter for San Francisco, and Luke Farrell is the tight end 2. Rucci entered the NFL in 2024, so this is his 2nd year. He's been with the Dolphins, and he's been with the Detroit Lions. He's played in 4 games, so not a whole lot of experience, but a 4th developmental tight end for the 49ers. And then the 49ers signed Colton Dowell, who's a receiver who's been around since 2023. He was a 7th-round pick of the Titans. He's been with the Titans and the Ravens, and he's played in 10 NFL games. A taller receiver, 6'3", 212. We put Dowell in that wide receiver room for the 49ers. I could stick his name maybe right here. I think this makes a lot of sense. Colton Dowell, boom. He basically replaces Javon Baker with San Francisco. But that was Colton Dowell is not going to be on this list because he's a reserve futures contract. So it has nothing to do with Javon Baker. The 49ers have signed a couple players to reserve future contracts. I'm going to add Colton Dowell to the list down here. Milo Eifler and Colton Dowell. Those are 2 players whose contract will kick in March for the new league year. So they're basically stashing guys for next season with Colton Dowell and Milo Eifler. So the 2 additions today that can play this year for San Francisco are Derek Forrest and Hayden Rucci, the safety and the tight end. All right. That's all that we had to get through. Try to make it as painless as possible, but I do have to keep you guys apprised of the 49ers roster. Now I can answer any questions that you might have. We can talk schematics. We can talk Sam Darnold. Earlier today, I talked about the 49ers needing to stop the Seahawks run game. We've done videos about that. That's obvious. Seattle ran for 180 yards. The offense can help the defense stop the Seahawks run, though. Like, if the offense does the things it's supposed to do, convert third downs, find a way to bring the safety down, find some explosives in the pass game, the more success you have on that side of the ball, the better you position your defense to flourish. Nothing really went right for the 49ers in that January 3rd game against the Seahawks, and they got completely dominated on the stat sheet as a result. We could even open up that stat sheet. I want to compare the stat sheet of Week 18 with the stat sheet of Week 1, just so you could see how formulaically those two games were complete opposites. So with this software that the NFL has, you can open it up. Here we go. You can see the final score, 13-3. Look at some of these numbers, though. Seattle was at 380 or 361 yards. The 49ers at 173. It's the lowest point output of the Kyle Shanahan tenure. It's one of the lowest yardage outputs, too. 49ers are at 4.1 yards per play. For reference, the Eagles managed just 4.3 yards per play against the 49ers, and that sealed the firing of their offensive coordinator. And Philadelphia has had much bigger problems than the 49ers offensively this year. So this is just a one-game look, but it's valuable perspective for how much the 49ers struggled against Seattle. And it's also valuable perspective showing how good the 49ers defense was in Philly. The run game for San Francisco, only 53 yards, only 12 carries, which just goes to show you that there just weren't enough offensive plays for the 49ers. They only ran 42 snaps. You know, I talk about the need to go over 60. The Seahawks, this game was so formulaic. There were 67 offensive plays. They were at 39 runs. They were 4.6 per carry on those 39 runs. They weren't just running to run it. They're running efficiently, and that was allowing them to run it some more. They were 6 of 13 on third down. That's 46%, right around where you want to be. And they held the 49ers to everything that they didn't want to be, that they wanted to see with their opponent instead. So the 49ers were 2 of 9 on third down, low yards per play, low play count, by extension of both of those things, low yardage. And then look down here. You know, we could talk all we want about the special team. We could talk all we want about the time of possession that the 49ers normally win. Well, this game, they didn't come close to winning it. Hog the ball belonged to the Seattle Seahawks, 38 minutes to 22 minutes for the 49ers. All right, conversely, remember all those stats. Now let's go back to week 1 of the regular season. Let's see how the 49ers beat the Seahawks in week 1. It's funny because this is going to be essentially an inverse. 17-13, so Seattle was able to score the same amount of points, but the 49ers scored 2 more touchdowns worth of points than they did during that game back in early September. If you look at the team stats here, the 49ers had 384 yards of offense. That's about the same that the Seahawks had in week 18, and the Seahawks were down to 230 yards, just above where the 49ers were. The Seahawks were at 4.6 yards per play, just above where the 49ers were. It wasn't a very efficient performance from the 49ers, 5.3 per play, but it was a game where they ran a lot of plays, and that made up for it. They had 72 plays against the Seahawks, who had only 50. So the statistical domination that the 49ers were victims of in week 18, they actually imprinted on the Seahawks. The Seahawks were victims of that back in week 1. Time of possession is the ultimate kicker. 38 minutes of possession for the 49ers, 22 minutes of possession for the Seahawks. So the Seahawks basically did to the 49ers in week 18 what the 49ers did to them in week 1, except in week 1, and down to the missed field goals too, right? The Seahawks missed a couple kicks in week 18, and the 49ers missed a couple kicks in week 1. But the the Seahawks were able to skate away with a very, very greasy win in week one. They didn't end up doing that. And the 49ers did not take advantage of the breaks that were there for them in week 18 to have a greasy win opportunity. But say if Christian McCaffrey had not dropped the tipped pass and had scored on that play, or if Yetur Gross-Matos had fallen on the fumble where Sam Darnold tripped, if either of those two plays or both of those two plays go in the 49ers direction, all of a sudden they're in a very similar position as the Seahawks in week one. And that is the team that had gotten totally dominated statistically would still be in position to potentially steal a win. And I know that the 49ers shut the door on the Seahawks when Nick Bosa came around the edge and knocked the ball out of Sam Darnold's hands, but it was a nail biter. And the only reason that December 3rd or January 3rd was not a nail biter was because the 49ers did not capitalize on their opportunities even while they were being dominated. The overarching point behind all that is that this game is probably going to be close, even if there's one team that has a statistical advantage over the other. That's just how these division games usually play out, because the stats were not close in either week 1 or week 18, but the game in week 1 was very close, and the game in week 18 was one play away from being very close on the scoreboard as well. And I think the closest that the 49ers got was either the Gross-Matos fumble recovery attempt or the Christian McCaffrey drop that turned into an interception. So stop the run the football. That's how you get those statistics to fall into your favor. And if they do, then you have a better chance of winning the game. If you don't, then you've got to pray for a greasy win. And I'll say that it's going to be a lot harder to get a greasy win in this one than I think it was in 2021 when the 49ers went into Lambeau. I mean, that's a historical comp, right? They were about 6-point underdogs. They're about 7-point underdogs this time. They're coming off of short rest and a big road wild card win, and they're heading to play the 1 seed that's rested. That all happened in 2021 when the 49ers went to Green Bay, and they won. They prevailed. I mean, it's a tough situation, but it isn't a situation where there's always a path. And the 49ers have taken this path successfully before. But what happened in 2021 was that they got a greasy win. The path that year might have been even narrower than now. And by greasy win, I mean they had to have a blocked field goal. They had to block a punt. They had to return that blocked punt for a touchdown. I mean, it was brutal, right? Jimmy Garoppolo was playing with a shoulder injury that would require surgery and a thumb injury. A broken thumb, I think it was, both on his throwing arm. I mean, it was just the 49ers were decimated beyond decimation at some of these positions. And they really, to get a leg up against the Packers, needed to score on special teams. And that's exactly what they did. They also got a heroic performance from Dante Johnson. Remember the guy who played on nearly as many teams as Josh Johnson, the cornerback for the 49ers? He played for both the Seahawks and the 49ers. I guess we could call this the Richard Sherman Bowl, or we could call it the Dante Johnson Bowl, but he locked up Devontae Adams down the stretch of that game. And then Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel led the 49ers down the field, and it set up the game-winning field goal for Robbie Gould. But this one against the Seahawks, I don't think that they're going to have to take as greasy of a path if they have Ricky Pearsall, and if they hold, serve, and execute some of the things that we've been talking about on the offensive side of the ball as far as bringing one of those safeties down. And of course, to have any chance whatsoever at anything, you have to slow down the Seahawks run game. You can't let Zach Charbonnet have a 30-yard touchdown. You can't let Kenneth Walker go 20 yards on 3rd and 17. Winning at the line of scrimmage is going to set the table for a lot of other things for the 49ers further down the road. All right, good questions. Let's hop into the comment section. Daniel thinks that Sky or Ricky will get an early deep route. If that happens, the 49ers are going to need to hold up in protection, because they sent Sky on a big deep route, and the protection didn't hold up. The particular one I'm talking about was on the 4th and 2. It was a play where DeMarcus Lawrence, coming off the edge for Seattle, was working against Colton McKivitz, and the 49ers ran play action because they thought that Seattle would believe they would run the ball. But Lawrence just was firing off that he was just going to try to get into the backfield and figure things out later. And because the 49ers were faking a run, you don't want to give away what you're doing by what your offensive linemen are aligned like at the line of scrimmage. So for passes, your linemen are going to be starting to bend backwards a little bit so they can get into their pass protection stances. For runs, normally you're going to be hard down, heavy on your hands, leaning forward so you could have the leverage to be able to burrow forward. So to sell the play fake on that fourth down, Colton McKivitz had his hand heavy in the dirt, leaning forward. He was ready to bolt out of his stance. And that's where the veteran DeMarcus Lawrence got him. Because DeMarcus was like, well, okay, this guy's going heavy on his run blocking alignment, his stance ahead of the snap. They could be running play action out of this because he's almost overcommitting to this. Veteran guile, right? So all he did was a quick sidestep and he bolted right by Colton, who kind of just fell on his face because he had all of his power aimed forward just to burst out of the gate. And then when there was no body there to absorb the contact, he just fell forward and DeMarcus Lawrence was able to get right around him. The backup blocker on the play was Christian McCaffrey, but Christian was unable to handle DeMarcus Lawrence, so he was in Brock Purdy's lap in less than 2 seconds. And then the deep route, which was open on the play for Sky Moore, the deep route was not attainable because you can't throw the football if you're being taken to the ground by DeMarcus Lawrence. So the 49ers will try to set stuff up downfield, but they have to find a way to stave off this pass rush. And this goes back to what I was talking about at the start of the show. To stave off the pass rush, you have to usually run the football. But if you can't just run the football straight out of bed, you got to set it up in another way, but you can't throw deep because the pass rush is going to get you. That's where the short passing game comes in. The short passing game can theoretically set the 49ers up to run the football in this game. And then that can set the 49ers up for the longer passing game, your calculated strikes downfield. It's all part of a mosaic that has to be very carefully crafted by the 49ers. We got some super chats. Ernie says the 12th man can be as loud as they want, but the 49ers need the 13th man to show up wearing red and take over the bird's nest. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of 49ers fans, but yeah, they're saying that some of these Seattle podcasts, I guess, are trying to get season ticket holders to not sell their tickets to 49ers fans. We'll see how effective that is because the 49ers and I think the Seahawks themselves are also trying to discourage the sale of tickets to 49ers fans. But we'll gauge the effectiveness of that on Saturday because the 49ers took over a lot of the Seahawks stadium in week 1 of this season. Now, it's a little bit tougher on shorter notice. I think for week 1, you have the schedule for a few months and you could plan your trip. So I don't think there'll be as many 49ers fans in Seattle for this game. But there could still be enough to make a little bit of a difference, especially the ones right behind that visitor's sideline. I think Lombardi herself is going to be right behind the visitor's sideline in this game. So you can go up to her and you could say hi to her at the game on Saturday night. But, it's one of those things where, and you could say hi to Mark and Byron, by the way, too. My buddies are going to be at the game. But it's one of those things where as many fans as the 49ers can get in there, the more beneficial it obviously will be for their team. I don't think they can get enough in a playoff game to Seattle to make Seattle go on silent count. I mean, it would be legendary if they could do that. But in some stadiums like SoFi, the 49ers have taken over to the point, fan-wise, that they've gotten the opposing offense into silent communication. And if you can do that on the road, oh my goodness, that is a massive boost that is not necessarily calculated into NFL predictions. I'll tell you that. One thing that we can say is that if the 49ers win this one, there is a strong chance that they play the Rams at SoFi and that they would have a chance to take over SoFi Stadium and have a de facto home game for the NFC Championship. Like, that's Levi South. Soldier Field might be tougher to do, but SoFi is a definite possibility if the Rams can beat the Bears. We got a question: is Cowing playing this week? We'll find out. Probably not until, well, I think they'd have to activate him on Saturday. So we'll find out Saturday if it's yes or no. I doubt it, though. I don't think, unless the 49ers really think that they need to pull a fast one here, and they need a ton of explosiveness and speed to stretch the Seattle defense the way they want to. Maybe he's already put in enough good practice, but he's got a whole season's worth of inactivity to make up for right now. So I'm not really sure if he's going to be at that level yet, but if it does happen, we'll know about it, and we'll definitely ask Kyle Shanahan about it tomorrow. Chris is going to the game in Seattle. He's saying he hopes it's not a waste of money. Chris, you got to email me and let me know where you're sitting. Maybe we can come by and say hi, since my wife is going to be at the game, and a couple of friends will be there as well. I'll be up in the press box, but I'm happy to come down and say hi if you were at the game. Chris, a good guy from the Central Valley. And it's never a waste of money. Here's one thing. I think that this is really cool because the 49ers have earned this position. I talked about the vibe and just this real house money feeling of zen that's in that locker room right now. It's really loose in there. It's really cool. It's really cool. I haven't experienced a locker room like this since 2019. And then the house money component really didn't exist that year. There was youthful excitement about how good they were in 2019. So in that way, you didn't feel a lot of the pressure. But still, because they were the 1 seed, because they were at home, the path to the Super Bowl was clear. They had to get it done. Like, they had to make it to the Super Bowl, right? And so throughout that playoff, I mean, it was a great locker room and there was that great energy in there, but there still was this unspoken pressure that doesn't exist anymore here in 2025. What we are seeing is completely unprecedented, to the point where Steve Young said today on KMBR that he thinks that NFL teams are going to study the 49ers and emulate what they're doing on a coaching level, what they're doing on a talent acquisition level, what they're doing on a communication level, to be able to overcome injuries the way that they have and still be as successful as they have. So when Steve Young talks, we listen, right? And I think the 49ers this year, based on what Steve said, are running an unprecedented operation, something that we've never seen in NFL history. I mean, 13-5, losing your top edge rusher, all-pro player Nick Bosa, your top defender, all-pro future Hall of Famer Fred Warner, your top, I think, run defending defensive lineman, Mykal Williams, your first-round pick. That made their run defense crater. Your QB1 for 8 games. Your wide receiver 1 for the whole season, Brandon Ayuk. Your backup wide receiver 1, like the guy that was supposed to pick up the slack, but if Ayuk wasn't available, and Ricky Pearsall, missing him for most of the season. I mean, all of this, and George Kittle now, and he was already hurt for many games earlier with a hamstring. Normally, when you lose that much, you finish with 3 or 4 wins. Because this league, you don't have, the rules don't set up for having these massive rosters like Georgia in college football, where you can just sit back and lose a couple guys, but then just bring in the next 5-star recruit. In the NFL, it doesn't work that way. This is a 53-man roster. So when you lose, you're going to have at most 6 or 7 A-list names on this roster. So when you lose 4 of them, it normally spells doom for the entire season. So what the 49ers have been able to do to stay alive, and not only do that, but also to thrive over the course of this year, has been truly, truly exceptional. And I think it's unprecedented in NFL history. Steve Young thinks so as well. This team is going to be studied regardless of whether they lose or win this weekend. And they're going to be heavy, heavy underdogs against the Seattle Seahawks. But I do think that they have a chance to grab this game. And I talked about a lot of that strategy over the course of this show. We're still trying to get to 100,000, guys. 100,000 real subscribers. Let's see where we're at right now. We are at 98,858. 98,858. Over 5 million views over the last month. So you could best support this channel by hitting that subscribe button, and we'll get to 100,000 real subscribers. It almost seems like it's destiny, like it's all meant to be honest. Why? Because the pace that we're going at may see us hit 100,000 the night of the Seahawks game, the night of this game on Saturday night. Like, how crazy would that be? But the only way we're going to do it is if everybody does subscribe. So if you want to get us to 100,000 real subscribers, hit the button right now. I wish I could show you guys on the screen. I wish I could show you guys the counter on the screen here. Here, maybe I could do it. Maybe I could find it. We can go to our studio app. Yeah, we have the counter right here. Take a little screenshot of it, put it up on the screen. That's where we are. We've added over 3,000 in the last 28 days. And I think that it's even higher than that right now. Yeah, you guys are coming in hot. That's just a screenshot. It's actually at 98,868 now. Every single time I refresh it, it's going up a little bit. So the goal is to get the 100,000 maybe on the night of the Seahawks game. And if we do that, I don't think there's a way that the 49ers will lose, because it's destiny if that's the case. So you got to hit the subscribe button right now to ensure that the 49ers win this game on Saturday night. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure you go check out the San Francisco Standard. I've got a big article in there about who else other than Fred Warner. That's up on the Standard, and you should definitely sign up because that's the best 49ers written coverage that there is. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. We will talk to you very soon, tomorrow morning. Big day coming again. Peace out.